another thing I talk about in the book is something called secondary gains of victimhood. It's just another basic psychology term that a lot of people don't know about. And the simple example in the book, it's in every psychology textbook, is that a little girl breaks her leg, she gets excused from gym class, everybody signs her cast, she feels great. When it's time for the cast to come off, she means it when she tells the doctor, no, it's not healed yet. I still need the cast. She's gotten so attached to that victim role and the perks that come with it that she will literally believe that she's a victim. Much less, we also see, of course, cases of sophisticated adults and that may even try to wield that, deliberately. But even if they're not trying to, there's a seductive quality of victimhood because it can make people think, well, I don't have to work hard. I can just kick back and nothing is my fault. But of course, the good news is that, the more personal responsibility that we do take, the better and better things can be. And the more that we are real and authentic with people, the deeper and more meaningful our social support gets, which can help us overcome that epidemic of loneliness. So we want to be ourselves and make sure other people feel that they can be themselves, even if we disagree.
A lot is being said lately about free speech and the First Amendment and what it all means. Well, our next guest explains a lot of this, and she also talks about how free speech actually can help your mental health. Dr. Chloe is a clinical psychologist, USA Today bestselling author, and fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. She's been featured on Fox News, Timcast, a bunch of places, The Daily Wire. Her new book is Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. It's about the mental health benefits of free speech. But she and I also define what free speech is. There may be some confusion about that. Hopefully not after this podcast. Chloe Carmichael, the doctor, is next. Dr. Chloe, it's great to see you. I know it's Dr. Chloe Carmichael, but you really go by Dr. Chloe, right?
I do. Yeah, Michelle, it's really great to see you always.
I'm so fascinated that you decided as a clinical psychologist to write a book called Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. I think let's just start. You and I were talking off camera a little bit about the recent kerfuffle of Jimmy Kimmel being suspended. He may very well be let go. We don't know, from ABC. And people saying there's no more First Amendment, free speech. He's been silenced. I have argued vociferously that no, he has not been silenced. Free speech, the First Amendment does not entitle you to a late night show. How do you define free speech, and what do you make of this whole reaction to him?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I'm so glad we're talking about that. So as a clinical psychologist, I can tell you that uncertainty always increases anxiety. So in my book, I actually did answer some basic legal questions about what exactly is free speech and what exactly does it mean. And I think that's really important here. So first of all, nobody's talking about putting Jimmy Kimmel in jail.
Correct.
Right? So the law is Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. And we do have freedom of the press. However, the issue here with Jimmy Kimmel is he's on FCC airwaves, number one. So he's on public airwaves. And then he said something that was factually incorrect. Nobody even disputes what he said was incorrect as far as suggesting that the murderer, the assassin of Charlie Kirk, was affiliated with MAGA. Like, nobody's saying that. And what he then did, and this is where I think that he began to run afoul of FCC issues, is he refused to go on the air and just simply correct himself, right. To just simply say, hey, I misspoke. I said something that was, or may have even been perceived as not factually accurate, and so I just simply want to correct the record. So that's one thing as far as him and the FCC. Now, the other issue as far as Nexstar and Sinclair, the owners of those blocks of ABC affiliate stations locally, just simply saying like, hey, we don't want to carry his show anymore. I think that has to do more with the fact that he had 1 million viewers in 2015. He had in the key demographic. He is down to, you want to take a guess what he's down to now?
In the key demo?
Yeah.
Is it under 200,000?
It's 129,000 in the key demo. So he really literally decimated his viewership. I think he even actually told his audience at one point, if you voted for Trump, don't watch me.
Yeah.
Right? So he went from just, I think, being kind of a invisible person on the local ABC affiliate lineups. Nobody was really watching him. And then actively offending the audience. And that's when Nexstar Sinclair said, okay, we just think we can do better profit-wise. Nobody's watching and we're getting complaints.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not a First Amendment issue, and he has not been silenced. You mentioned and very well detailed how this works. Publicly owned airwaves, which all the networks are on, are controlled to an extent by the FCC. Now, he can say whatever he wants, but there may be consequences. And
Exactly.
No one's entitled to a late night show.
No, and just to really show that I'm consistent about this, no matter which side it's on. I was upset when Roseanne Barr's show was canceled, and that was a very interesting and different situation because, first of all, it was a fictional show, so nobody was even saying that there was an issue of her saying things factually untrue. There was no discussion of any FCC involvement at all, and it was literally a #1 show, or at least like a top 3. It had one season. It was wildly successful, and it was
And the thing
pulled.
she said, by the way, she said on social media, she didn't say on the TV program.
Right.
And they suspended her for that, not for any content in the show. But you know
Right.
what? They were entitled to do that too, right?
Right. And I didn't like it, but I thought she might have an employment law issue with them as far as saying, hey, I delivered a good show. Do you have a contractual reason to cancel me? But it wasn't really a free speech issue in a legal sense. So thanks for the opportunity to clarify what that means.
I think it's so important because I think a lot of people are just jumping to conclusions on this one and saying and making these hysterical statements about we've lost free speech, or as Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said, there is no First Amendment in Donald Trump's America. It's ridiculous. I don't like the FCC getting involved in content moderation. I didn't like the optics of Brendan Carr, the FCC chair, saying, we can do this the hard way or we can do this the easy way. But I also understand that these public airwaves have been dominated by sort of one side for a long, long time. So I think the market is resolving that. I think we see Greg Gutfeld flourishing in the late night ratings because people are going in that direction. They want to hear that. They want to see that. They want to see something that's actually thought-provoking and entertaining and funny.
And actually funny. No,
Actually-
like clapter, like where people are, it's almost like they feel like it's a political point and we're supposed to applaud, you know?
Yeah. It's fascinating. But to the notion of free speech and mental health or psychological health, by the way, how would you distinguish those two things I just said, mental health versus psychological or emotional health? Are they separate? Are they intertwined?
Oh yeah, I mean they're very much the same thing. So your mental health, your psychological health. I would use those terms almost interchangeably.
And to be able to speak freely is really, really important. But I think too, I say that and then I think, well, some people have spoken freely on whatever social media, wherever they have an outlet, and they've gotten horrendous backlash for it. And that can affect your mental health as well. So how do you sort of make those two notions work together? Stay right there, but let me tell you, after almost 30 years on the sidelines covering the NFL and the NBA and the Olympic Games and all of those sports, you name it, I learned that true expertise comes from consistency, not guesswork. And that's why I've partnered with Sports Corner Daily. Their free daily picks keep hitting with analysis so sharp even casual fans can win. So the NFL season is well underway, so there's no better time to jump into this. I'm telling you, get 2 expert picks sent to you every single day, absolutely free. So all you have to do is go to sportsdailypick.com, sportsdailypick.com, and sign up. It takes seconds. No cost, No risk, just smart, winning insights. Don't wait. You want to get into this season. Get into it the right way with sportsdailypick.com. Sportsdailypick.com. Sports Corner Daily, where winners start their day. Sportsdailypick.com. Head over there. You'll be glad you did. How do you sort of make those two notions work together?
Yeah, well, so speaking freely doesn't mean no filter, and it doesn't mean no boundaries. So to your point, if a person, can't handle, just like you, getting on the air, I'm sure you get all kinds of positive and negative remarks if you simply say the sky is blue, right? Mm-hmm. So people who cannot handle widespread remarks or backlash, might do well to just really think about if they want to express themselves in any way, like putting a new outfit on social media, can evoke all kinds of comments that we may or may not, feel like we have the bandwidth to mentally process, So processing the feedback we get on social media is a whole other issue, even when you're saying perfectly benign things. But what I want people to know is that whether you do it on social media, if you're up for that, but especially in your personal life with people who really know you, it's important to be yourself, because I've talked to so many people that message me privately or speak to me like in real life, and they're like, oh yeah, my friends and family would disown me if they knew that I don't really, I don't think that boys should be joining the girls' soccer team, or, whatever it is. And there's something when it's like they're living in the witness protection program. And we all know intuitively that being authentic, being yourself is good for you, right? So even with psychologists and, therapy 101 is we sit down with clients and we try to help them to articulate and say precisely and accurately how they really feel. And then they experience what Freud called, catharsis, right? When you express, if we think about what that even means, it means to get out. You find, you even discover yourself. Studies have shown that when you talk about experiences, you gain objectivity over them and you can be reflective about them. You can say, oh yeah, he arrived 15 minutes late and I, threw a dish at the wall, right? So as I say it aloud, I realize I'm overreacting, right? So just there's a simple thing about saying what happened or saying what you think, putting it into words. It keeps us grounded in reality. It helps us with emotional processing. And so as a psychologist, I'm really concerned that when people are stifling themselves for fears of cancel culture, what they're doing is they're really disconnecting and going into suppression and denial about some perhaps really important thoughts and feelings.
That is really interesting. And I'll full disclosure, I started therapy when I was anorexic in the 7th grade, 8th grade, and really never stopped because it was so helpful to me. Not only getting out of that dysphoria about my body, but then just as I continued with it, understanding where all my insecurities came from, what all my fears were about, when they were unfounded, and all of that, just even the cognitive stuff is so amazingly productive to go through. And to, like you said, to hear yourself say something out loud, it can be quite therapeutic. Mental health is a big issue in America, Chloe, Dr. Chloe. And I worry about it from two sides. Yes, the ability to express yourself is very, very important. I feel like there are people on social media, in politics, in Hollywood, who are expressing things that are quite negative, quite demeaning, quite divisive. And I have to believe that that is affecting people's mental health as well. And I'm wondering what you make of this need to publicly denigrate people. We could talk about Charlie Kirk and others. Why people do it and what the consequences are of that.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. That's such a good question. So what psychologists know, and I think this will be very intuitive for everybody listening, is that when you have somebody that has an anger management problem or a violence issue, or they're in, constant irritability or disputes with people, one of the first things you want to do is teach them how to use their words. You want to increase their emotional vocabulary. and improve their ability to have dialogue instead of, just holding it all in and then exploding. So what's happening, I think part of the reason that we are seeing, as you said, this uptick in, really vitriolic language or even actual violence, I think is actually connected to the fact that certain groups especially, and I'll share some statistics with you about who those groups are, certain groups especially are refusing to dialogue. They have what I'm calling dialogue intolerance because they actually think it's virtuous to cut off friends and family who think differently from you. So if you think about that with what I just said, that, we know that dialogue increases people's ability to overcome and to solve problems and to work through feelings of anger and to decrease their violent behaviors. When we have, and I'll just come out and say it, and this is by self-report, by the way, this isn't me, saying anything that about people that they haven't literally said themselves. In my book, I call it the 5 Ds. So people who identify as liberal are multiple times more likely than people who identify as conservative to defriend on social media, to distance in real life, to disinvite a speaker, to decline to date, and to drop contact altogether over political differences. Now, this absolutely also goes along with some new polling that we've seen where, people who identify as liberal, and in fact, the more liberal they identify as, the more likely they are, this is according to a U.gov poll, to endorse actually committing political violence or celebrating political violence. And I think that goes with and is maybe driven by the fact that they got, and I say this with great compassion, I want to help them, they got the misguided idea in their head that words are violence, and so therefore we have to stop dialoguing, and with people who disagree with us, the virtuous thing to do is to just cut them out of our life, defriend them, and stop talking to them. I believe that they are inadvertently setting themselves up to have a real problem with anger. And I think that's why we're seeing some of that polling now about political violence coming from people who identify as being on the left.
I mean, it's interesting. I tend to be somewhat reticent to buy into polling, but when it's overwhelming, when the statistics are kind of overwhelming, as some TV ratings are, you kind of go, well, there you have it. And why do you suppose that is? I mean, you can say, okay, liberals are more likely to do that. Why?
Interesting question. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say I don't think it's in the DNA of liberals. In my book, I also explain, say, in the 80s and 90s, it was conservatives that were, actually trying to make laws about prohibiting speech, for example, certain kinds of rap lyrics. Remember the parental advisory, explicit lyrics thing that was coming from conservatives,
right.
As well as limiting pornography, which I think you can have I don't actually see that as speech, but that was again conservatives that were trying to limit that form of quote expression. So I just want to say I don't think it has to be in the DNA about free speech. However, one thing I do think could be driving this, group difference that we're seeing today is that it's just been a long time, again, fact of psychological data that when we measure traits of individualism versus collectivism, people on the left are much higher on collectivism. Yeah. That's why in the extreme we get, say, things like communism or whatever. But on the positive side, I think leftists would say, yeah, we care for our neighbors. We see ourselves as one, right? And that's who they are. They're higher on collectivism, and it's been measured that way over and over for decades. Conservatives, on the other hand, are higher on individualism. The don't tread on me. You do your thing, I'll do mine. they do actually tend to care for their neighbors very much. Conservatives are higher actually in charitable giving and other types of things. So you can measure that in different ways. But I think that since liberals are higher on collectivism, it would make sense maybe then that they feel like they have to act as a block, and that, like they vote as a block. And if you're not, with the party line, then you're outside of it and you're kind of othered in that way. I'm not sure what's driving it, but you asked the question, and that's my best guess.
You know what? It's really interesting. I've been reading a lot about, collectivism versus individualism. I happen to be an individualist, and that doesn't mean I'm selfish or self-centered. What it means is I take my agency and I use it to the best of my ability to build up my own life, to take responsibility for my actions, good and bad, to take accountability for my mistakes. That's what I do. I think with collectivism, Dr. Chloe, there's this notion that, well, in order to figure out who our neighbors and who our group is, we have to identify a certain way. So we're Democrats, maybe we're part of the LGBTQ community, we're aggrieved, we're descendants of slaves. We are these groups. We're women who have been, perhaps feel that they have grievances. And there's this thing called grievance collecting. And, misery loves company. And so all these grievance collectors band together and say, let's punish or let's ostracize the people we feel are responsible for our lot in life. And I think there's a lot of envy attached to it. We certainly see a lot of social and class warfare being employed by the left. What do you think? Am I sounding ridiculous?
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So there's a, I think, almost kind of a frightening field of psychology. It's called social identity complexity. And, what they're doing is they're studying, as you said, all these different factors of people's identity and understanding like how they fit together, or how you can essentially, manipulate people to feel more, kind of merged or acting upon themselves as, certain aspects of their identity. And as you said, I think in that collectivist mentality, it's a lot easier to think about things in an us versus them, type of category.
Correct,
Whereas with individualism, and I'm very much for individualism as well, I just think it's important to note that in my view as well, individualism coincides more with the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is where we have an individual relationship with God. That first and foremost, as you mentioned, Charlie Kirk, God, family, country, in that order was what he said. And it's that personal responsibility, as you said, it's that one-to-one relationship with God. And we know that the first thing that communists and Marxism, what they want to do, and this is like literally in their manifesto,
right?
They want to get rid of that. They want to be the God,
yes,
and have people literally work as a collective without even the family part in the middle as well. They see the family as an obstacle.
As an obstacle, yes.
Yes,
to
as
their
opposed
goals.
to a God-given obligation.
Yeah, it's a little sinister to me. No, it's a lot sinister to me, to be honest. And we've seen this with the BLM organization, and they claim to be a Marxist organization that wanted to do away with the nuclear family. Well, the nuclear family, to me, is the most important thing in my life outside of my spirituality. And it's just the identity politics seem to me to be a tool to separate us, to make people feel aggrieved. Because to me, you got a choice. You get one life, and you can choose to feel like a victim, and you can choose to stack up your grievances and point the finger at everyone else, or you can say, you know what, I'm stronger than that. I have more agency over my life than that. I'm going to take responsibility and accountability and initiative for my own successes and failures in life. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm going to continue to share from my book.
Yes,
Can
please.
I say that? Why Free
That's why
Speech
we're
Matters
here.
and How to Use It Fearlessly. I was so thankful for your quote on that, calling it a game changer. So just to respond to what you said there about, personal responsibility and why that matters so much. as opposed to victimhood. Another thing I talk about in the book is something called secondary gains of victimhood. It's just another basic psychology term that a lot of people don't know about. And the simple example in the book, it's in every psychology textbook, is that a little girl breaks her leg, she gets excused from gym class, everybody signs her cast, she feels great. When it's time for the cast to come off, she means it when she tells the doctor, no, it's not healed yet. I still need the cast. She's gotten so attached to that victim role and the perks that come with it that she will literally believe that she's a victim. Much less, we also see, of course, cases of sophisticated adults and that may even try to wield that, deliberately. But even if they're not trying to, there's a seductive quality of victimhood because it can make people think, well, I don't have to work hard. I can just kick back and nothing is my fault. But of course, the good news is that, the more personal responsibility that we do take, the better and better things can be. And the more that we are real and authentic with people, the deeper and more meaningful our social support gets, which can help us overcome that epidemic of loneliness. So we want to be ourselves and make sure other people feel that they can be themselves, even if we disagree.
It's been such a pleasure to talk with you. I hope we can do it again. She is Dr. Chloe Carmichael. The book is Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. Yes, and I was proud to write a little paragraph for that, endorsing that book, and I'm happy for you, and I'm happy to have you as a guest anytime. You say a lot of really meaningful, interesting things that I think can shift people's perspective. So thank you.
Thanks again, Michelle. More at freespeechtoday.com.
freespeechtoday.com. Be brave, do good, like Dr. Chloe, and we'll see you next time. Hey, you can keep up with the Trump administration when you subscribe to the Trump Report. It's an email that brings you daily highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Subscribe today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.